My name is Dorothy Calder, 42 years old. The night my husband died still hums behind my eyelids like the after image of headlights. One second we were talking about what dessert to order next time, and the next, glass was falling like rain. When I woke up in the hospital, the lights were too bright, the air too white, and Marcus was gone. I remember asking the nurse where he was. Her silence told me before her lips could. My legs were heavy, my ribs fractured, and somewhere in the middle of it, I stopped feeling my own weight. Months later, after surgeries and endless physiotherapy, I could stand again, with a cane and more hesitation than balance. The house Marcus and I had built together turned cold in ways I couldn't fix with blankets or sunlight. Every room echoed his name. Then came Payton, my younger sister. 7 years younger, married to David, the man who always smiled with his mouth but not his eyes. They showed up at the hospital with tulips and concern. "The doctor said you'll need help at home," Payton said softly, her hand warm over mine. "You shouldn't be alone right now." David nodded, setting the flowers down. "We can stay for a while, help with cooking, cleaning, just until you're steady again." At the time, the offer sounded like salvation. I didn't have the courage to say no. When I came home, they moved into the guest room, the one Marcus had planned to turn into a studio. Payton filled the kitchen with her laughter, rearranging spices and stacking my dishes in new places. David took over the yard, mowing the grass, even when it didn't need cutting. At first, I was grateful. But gratitude, I learned, can grow into something uneasy when it overstays. There were moments that didn't fit the picture of kindness. Once, when I tried to cook soup for us, I burned it. Payton smiled and said, "You're still recovering, it's okay." But she took the spoon from my hand before I could try again. Another time, I caught David organizing my paperwork to help. Later, I couldn't find my insurance folder. He said maybe I misplaced it. A week later, he handed it back with a grin. Found it behind the couch. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe both of them. The thing about loss is that it makes you hungry for normalcy. So when something feels wrong, you tell yourself you're imagining it. In the evenings, Payton would sit beside me on the couch, scrolling through her phone while I tried to knit again. "You should get out more," she'd say. "It's not healthy staying in." "I'm still doing therapy," I'd answer. "Right," she'd say, the words soft but edged. She meant well, or so I told myself. But every time she looked at me, there was a flicker behind her smile, as though she was studying me for something I couldn't name. 2 months after they moved in, I noticed she'd labeled a small key box by the entryway. Front door, mailbox, storage. When I opened it one morning, my house deed key was missing. She returned it later, laughing it off. "Oh, I must have dropped it into my purse." That night, I couldn't sleep. I dreamed of Marcus standing at the door, saying, "Not everyone who helps you means well." The next morning, I found a pamphlet on the kitchen counter, Power of Attorney, Protecting Loved Ones. I assumed it came from the hospital mail until I noticed my name written faintly on the edge. Payton must have brought it home by mistake. I tucked it into a drawer and told myself not to be paranoid. Still, I began noticing small things, questions that didn't sound like questions. "Do you still handle your own bills, or should I start setting them up online for you?" Payton asked one afternoon while wiping the counter. "I can manage," I said. She smiled without looking up. "Of course you can." Another time, David joked, "Maybe we should install security cameras, just in case you fall or something." I told him I didn't need them. The next morning, I found a box of cameras on the porch, unopened. When I called Payton out on it, she said, "You're overthinking everything lately." Maybe I was. Grief makes you doubt your own mind. But still, I started keeping my documents in a different place each night. One evening, as rain pressed against the windows, I decided to tell them what had been growing inside me. We were eating dinner, roasted chicken, the smell of thyme filling the silence. "I've been thinking," I said carefully, cutting into the chicken that tasted like paper. "I'm doing much better now. I can manage things on my own again. Maybe it's time you both got back to your lives." Payton's fork paused midair. David didn't look up. "That's sudden," Payton said after a beat. "I just think you've done enough. You've been amazing, really. But I'm ready." David kept eating, eyes on his plate. Payton forced a smile. "We'll talk about it," she said finally. But they didn't. Days turned into weeks. Their things spread further. David's jackets in the hall closet, Payton's makeup on my bathroom counter, their laughter in every corner. I began to feel like a guest in my own house. One afternoon, I tried to walk without my cane for the first time. I made it halfway across the living room before my knee buckled. I caught myself on the table and laughed through tears. Payton appeared at the doorway. "You're pushing too hard," she said, her voice sharp with worry, or maybe warning. "I need to learn," I said. She sighed. "You need rest." That night, I lay awake, listening to their whispers through the wall. I couldn't make out words, only tones. Hers quick and anxious, his low and firm. Something in me knew that conversation wasn't about dinner or therapy schedules. Still, I told myself they were just concerned. That family doesn't hurt family. It wasn't until much later that I'd realize sometimes love is just the prettiest disguise for control. For now, I smiled through breakfasts and thank yous. I watched Peyton's reflection linger too long in mirrors when she thought I wasn't looking. I noticed David counting envelopes on my desk, his thumb tracing numbers like a habit. And one morning, as I sipped my coffee, I saw a sticky note beside the phone. It read, "County Registrar, Amanda R., in Peyton's handwriting." When I asked about it, she said, "Oh, just a reminder for something David's handling." But something inside me shifted then, a small click, like a lock turning. I didn't know it yet, but the storm had already started. The message arrived the way bad news always seems to, ordinary as a ping, casual as a draft of air under the door. I was in the living room testing my balance, one hand hovering over the back of the sofa, the other clutching my phone for a metronome beat. Step, breathe, step. The cane leaned against the bookshelf like a patient witness. A notification pulsed on the screen, from Payton. I meant to set it aside and keep moving. Instead, my palm slipped and the phone clattered to the rug, the icon opening with the impact. A waveform unfurled. Sound spilled. "David, I can't do this anymore," Peyton's voice said, hushed but crisp, the way she spoke when she wanted to be overheard by exactly one person. In the background came the soft clink of dishes, the squeak of our faucet. I froze mid-step, knee trembling. The room's edges thickened, sounds dropping out until all I heard was her. "I can't stand having Dorothy in this house," she said. "She's a burden. We've already spent so much money." A faint male murmur, "David," answered with a non-committal, Payton pressed on, confident now that he was listening. "But I found a solution. There's this place. It's a home for people who can't live alone. $1,200 a month. I talked to the administrator. I told him Dorothy gets confused, that it's not safe for her to be by herself. I reached for the sofa and didn't make it. I sank to the rug and stared at a sun thread pooling on the floorboards. I also checked the house documents," Payton continued. "It's in her name, but Amanda said there's a way to transfer title if I'm guardian. She works at the county registrar. She can help push it through." Another murmur from David. He sounded wary the way a man looks down at a broken fence and calculates which boards might still hold. "Next Tuesday we tell her she has a routine medical check," Payton said, each word smooth from rehearsal. "We take her there and register her. By the time she realizes it'll be done. We'll have custody. She'll be safe." The word safe twisted, a ribbon turned into a noose. There was a pause, the shape of her looking at herself in a mirror, and then, "We can sell the house. It's worth a lot. We can pay off everything and take that trip." A soft laugh, almost a cough. David's low assent. The microphone picked up the scrape of a chair on tile, the domestic soundtrack of mutiny. I should have stopped it. I should have closed the app and told myself I misheard. But the recording kept going, as if it were relieved to unspool. "The best part," Payton said, and now her voice brightened the way it does when she spots a discount sign. "We won't have to pretend anymore. No more cooking and shower schedules. No more listening to her talk about Marcus. God, I always hated that man." The room shifted. For a second, I was back in the passenger seat, Marcus's hand on my knee and the world tilting into glass. Peyton's breath brushed the microphone. "I'm glad he's gone." Something inside me went still. Not dead, still, like a lake right before it ices. The recording ended. The waveform collapsed into a straight line as neat as a signature. I sat there until the sun thread moved. The air smelled like last night's thyme and this morning's soap. I pressed replay and made myself listen to the whole thing again, as if repetition might change a fact into a rumor. It didn't. When it finished, I put the phone face down and closed my eyes. For a moment, no, more than a moment, I thought about walking into the kitchen and asking Payton if she meant it. She could say it was stress, or a joke, or a misunderstanding. I might even forgive her if she cried right. But then I heard her laugh again in my head, the small chiming laugh that followed trip. That sound did something to me I can't unname. It hardened the air. I stood. My knee didn't buckle. On the kitchen table lay a thin black Sharpie and a stack of envelopes I'd been avoiding. I turned one over to the blank side and wrote a list with block letters that didn't shake. Bank County Lawyer Police. I underlined each word until the pen bled through. Next, I photographed the deed, the insurance policies, the mortgage statements. I scanned the QR stickers on the back of my medical records and downloaded PDFs. I pulled the power of attorney pamphlet from the drawer where I'd hidden it and tucked it into a file with my birth certificate and marriage license. Then I slid everything, originals and copies, into the fireproof pouch Marcus insisted we buy the year we moved in. We used to tease him for being paranoid about worst-case scenarios. It turns out he was just good at listening to the future. The house was quiet. Payton had gone to yoga. David was in the yard doing nothing to the grass. I moved through rooms with a calm I hadn't felt since the accident. My body remembered me. I found the backup key Payton didn't know about in the hollow of a paperback Marcus had never liked. I replaced the small key in the labeled box with a decoy to measure whether anyone touched it again. I turned off the refrigerator camera I hadn't asked for and slid the unopened box of door cams into the very back of the hall closet, behind winter coats I'd stopped wearing. In the mirror, I looked like a woman making tea. On the inside, I was laying floorboards across a river. That night I didn't sleep. But it wasn't the kind of sleeplessness that eats you. It was the focused, needlepoint wakefulness of counting stitches. In the hours when the neighborhood went thin and the distant highway sang, I texted a rehab friend named Mira. "You were right. Standing is mostly fear." She replied with a single line, "Stand anyway." I took a shower. I set my clothes out. I packed the file pouch into a canvas bag, added my phone charger, a notebook, my passport, even though I wasn't going anywhere. I left the cane by the door and chose it only on my second thought, not my first. Before dawn flattened the sky, I brewed coffee strong enough to taste like an argument and wrote a second list. This one smaller, for after. Change locks alert. Credit bureaus. Freeze accounts. Rewrite will. We had a will, Marcus and I, with all the careful love couples pour into permanent ink. It would need a new language now, something that made room for the girl I once raised and the woman she had become in rooms I couldn't see. At 6:40, I heard Peyton's bedroom door. Her feet patted down the hall. A toilet flushed. A faucet sang. I held very still and listened to the small life she lived on mornings like this. I wanted to remember everything, not as a weapon, but as a record. By 7, the house smelled like the cinnamon oatmeal she liked. She set a bowl in front of me with a smile. "Big day?" she asked, eyeing my bag. "Therapy," I said, "and a coffee with Mira." "Good," she said, a little too brightly. "You're getting stronger." David kissed Peyton's hair and said he'd be back by noon. He kissed the air near my cheek the way he always did, as if afraid affection might be contagious. When they left the kitchen, I rinsed my bowl and stacked it in the sink just the way Peyton liked. I didn't leave a note. I didn't want to give her the gift of a script she could rehearse. I wanted the truth to arrive in her mouth exactly as it had arrived in mine, uninvited. The sky was the color of a bruise that had started to heal. I called a cab and waited on the porch, bag under my arm, cane a faithful metronome at my side. A neighbor waved. I waved back and thought of every time I had told myself family doesn't hurt family, as if that were a law of physics. Gravity pulls what it can. Everything else is habit. In the cab, the driver asked if I minded the radio. I said no. The song that came on was something Marcus used to sing wrong on purpose. I didn't cry. I touched the edge of the fireproof pouch and counted the hard corners. When the bank came into view, its glass fronts looked like a mouth too bright with teeth. It wouldn't open for 20 minutes. I sat at the cafe across the street with my back to the wall and my eyes on the door. The coffee steamed in stubborn spirals. A man in a navy suit rehearsed a smile in his reflection. My phone face down on the table was a sleeping animal. I didn't wake it. When the bank unlocked, the manager I remembered, Susan, stepped into the lobby with a ring of keys. She looked older in the way we all do, less lacquer, more truth. When she recognized me, something in her face softened into professional sorrow. "Dorothy," she said, "I'm so sorry about—" "I need your help," I said quietly. "All of it." She ushered me into her office and closed the door with the kind of care that says two things at once. It's safe here, and what's outside is not. I laid the pouch on her desk and told her what I could without letting my anger steer. I kept my voice level. My hands didn't shake. When we logged into my accounts, the screen filled with a gradual offense, small transfers, always under a threshold that might trip attention, trickling from my savings into an account with Payton's last name hidden behind new initials. It was almost elegant, the way neglect can be when it wears a cardigan. "Here," Susan said, tapping a line item. "There's a power of attorney on file." She pulled the document up, and there it was, my name, my supposed signature. The loop of the R wrong, the flourish at the end of Calder a little too proud. "That isn't mine," I said. I didn't raise my voice. "Who submitted it?" She traced an internal note, read to herself, frowned. "It came through with supporting medical records, she said, eyes sharpening. "From your accident. They framed it as temporary, emergency, authority." For a moment, I saw Payton in a waiting room, her hands tidy around a clipboard. I saw her practicing my name in the air to get the cadence right. "Print everything," I said, "please." She did. Transaction lists, the POA, the routing details, the IP addresses for online submissions. The stack grew until it felt like a book about a person I used to be. "Dorothy," Susan said gently, "you should take this to the police." "I will," I said, "after the county office." "Do you want me to alert fraud right now?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "If the house is touched while the alert's live, they'll know I know. I'd rather arrive there first." Susan looked like she wanted to argue. Then she saw something in my face that made her sit back and nod. "Be careful," she said. "If you need me to call, I will." Outside, the day had finally found its shape. I tucked the documents into my bag and stepped onto the sidewalk without the cane for the length of 3 car hoods. My knee held. I didn't smile. I didn't give the morning that. I called another cab and said, "County Registrar, please." The driver asked which building. I told him the one with the stone arch and the flag that always looked tired. As we pulled into traffic, I thought of Payton as a 16-year-old, asleep on my couch the first night our parents didn't come home. Her mouth was open, the world too big. I tucked a blanket under her chin and promised, out loud, to be both mother and sister. It wasn't a hero's vow. It was a practical list like the one in my pocket. Work 2 jobs, keep the lights on, love her first. People don't become monsters in one decision. They erode. They bargain. They choose small doors until the room they're in is a cage with a nice view. At the county office, I would ask for Amanda. In a hallway that smelled like coins and dust, I would press play on the part of me that didn't tremble. And if I did tremble, I would name it standing. Next Tuesday, Payton thought she would take me somewhere and decide my life. Today, I would go someplace first and decide it myself. The cab turned under the stone arch. I straightened the file in my lap, the way I used to smooth Marcus's tie before we walked into rooms together. The driver braked. The day waited. "Good luck," he said. "Thanks," I said, and opened the door into my own weather. The county registrar's office smelled like paper, lemon polish, and old dust. Rows of metal file cabinets glinted under fluorescent light. It was the kind of place that made you feel smaller than a document, like the truth had to fit inside a folder to be real. At the front desk, a young receptionist looked up from her computer. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Amanda Richardson," I said, my voice steady. She clicked through a directory. "She's in property records, room 312. Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said, "but she'll want to see me." The receptionist studied me a second too long before pointing toward the hallway. I walked slowly, the sound of my cane tapping on the linoleum echoing off the walls. Each step felt measured, deliberate. At the end of the hall, I saw a plaque. Room 312, Property and Ownership Records. Inside, a woman in her 30s looked up from her desk. Blonde hair, perfect curls, lipstick a shade too red for office lighting. "Can I help you?" she asked. I closed the door behind me. "You're Amanda Richardson?" "Yes. I'm Dorothy Calder, Payton's sister." Her eyes widened just for a heartbeat. "Oh, Dorothy. I've heard a lot about you." "I'm sure you have," I said quietly. "Do you have a moment to talk in private?" Amanda hesitated, glancing toward the cubicles outside. "There's a conference room next door. Just a minute." She led me inside a small room with a long table and 2 chairs. The air conditioning hummed too loudly. When the door closed, I reached into my bag and turned on my phone's voice recorder. "Payton told me about your plan," I said. Amanda's smile faltered. Plan?" "Yes," I said evenly. "The one where you help her declare me mentally unfit so she can take my house." Her face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." I pulled the printed documents from my bag and slid them across the table. The forged power of attorney, the account transfers, the letterhead bearing her department's seal. "You've already touched my life once. I'd like you to be honest this time." Amanda's hands trembled as she looked down at the papers. I didn't mean to do anything illegal. She came to me, said you were struggling, said you were confused after the accident. And you believed her? She seemed sincere. Did she pay you? Amanda's throat moved as she swallowed. No, she said she needed advice. What kind of advice? She wanted to know how guardianship worked, how to apply for emergency authority if someone couldn't manage their affairs. Did you tell her how to do it? Yes, but it was just information. Anyone could look it up online. I leaned forward. Did you offer to help process the paperwork faster? Silence, then a small nod. She said time was critical, that you might hurt yourself if someone didn't intervene. I studied her for a long second. And did you ever verify that? Did you ever meet me? Amanda's eyes shone with guilt. No. Then you were willing to destroy someone's life based on a story. Her breath caught. I thought I was helping. No, I said softly. You were helping her help herself. I ended the recording and stood. I suggest you prepare to explain all this to the police. Amanda gripped the table edge. Wait, Dorothy, please. If you tell them I was involved, I could lose my job. You should have thought about that before you risked mine. I left her sitting there, pale and trembling, and stepped out into the corridor. The hum of the air conditioner followed me all the way to the elevator. Outside, the sun was brighter than I remembered. I took a deep breath, pulled my phone from my pocket, and dialed Robert Chen, the attorney Mira had recommended. He answered on the second ring. Robert Chen speaking. Mr. Chen, my name is Dorothy Calder. I was referred by Mira Santos. I need legal help. What's going on? He asked. It's about fraud, forgery, maybe worse. Come to my office, downtown. I'll clear my schedule. When I arrived, his office looked exactly like the kind of place that holds other people's secrets for a living. Thick carpets, dark wood, and a framed diploma that read Harvard Law. But the photo on his desk stopped me. A woman in a wheelchair, smiling in front of a lake. His mother, maybe. He stood when I entered. Dorothy, Mira told me you were strong. I'm trying to be. Sit, he said, gesturing to a chair. Tell me everything. And I did. I played him the voice message. I showed him the forged power of attorney, the bank transactions, Amanda's confession. His expression never changed, but his fingers tightened slightly around a pen. When I finished, he leaned back and exhaled. This isn't just family betrayal, he said. This is criminal. Fraud, forgery, theft, conspiracy, the list is long. Can we stop them, I asked. He nodded slowly. Yes, but we need to move carefully. We'll start with the police. You have enough evidence to open an investigation immediately. My heart hammered. Will Payton go to jail? Possibly. That's not up to us. For a moment, I saw her again, 16, in a second-hand dress, crying over our parents' casket. I'd promised her that day she'd never be alone. Robert studied me. You're hesitating. She's my sister, I said. I raised her. He nodded. Sometimes love makes us the perfect victims. I looked down at my hands, at the faint tremor that had returned since the accident. She laughed, I whispered. In that message, she laughed about my husband's death. Robert's voice softened. Then she already sentenced herself. That night, I didn't go home. I booked a small hotel near the airport, a clean, quiet room with a single bed and a lamp that flickered when I turned it on. I spread the evidence on the bed like puzzle pieces. The voice message, the forged documents, Amanda's transcript. My phone buzzed. Payton, then David. Where are you? Are you okay? Please call us back. I watched the screen until the notifications faded. Then I powered it off. For hours, I stared at the ceiling. The wallpaper was beige, the air smelled like detergent, and my thoughts circled the same question. When does love turn into something else? By dawn, I had my answer. Love becomes poison the moment someone decides they deserve more of your life than you do. At 8 sharp, I met Robert in front of the police station. He carried a folder thick with everything we'd gathered. Are you ready? He asked. I've been ready since the night she laughed. Inside, a detective named Martinez listened as we presented the evidence. She didn't interrupt. She just kept nodding, her pen scratching across paper. When we finished, she looked up. We have enough to move forward, she said. Do you want to be present when we confront them? Yes, I said. I want to see their faces. Martinez exchanged a glance with Robert. He nodded. We can arrange that. An hour later, we were in 2 police cars heading toward my house. Through the window, the city blurred into shapes I'd known all my life. Coffee shops, bookstores, the old church where Marcus and I got married. Every street felt like a reminder of how far I'd come and how far I'd fallen. As we pulled into my driveway, my heart felt like it was caught between beats. Payton's car was there, so was David's. Robert's hand rested lightly on my arm. "You're not alone this time," he said. I nodded. "Let's finish this." We stepped out of the car. The air was still, the kind of quiet that happens before a storm breaks. I unlocked the door, my cane tapping softly on the floor as I stepped inside. Payton was in the kitchen, humming. She turned when she saw me and smiled. "Dorothy, oh my God, where have you been? We've been so worried." Her voice cracked on the last word. I didn't answer. Behind me, the detectives entered. Martinez's badge caught the light. Payton's smile froze. "What's going on?" she whispered. I didn't speak. I just reached into my bag, opened my phone, and pressed play. Her own voice filled the room. "David, I can't do this anymore." The sound of her own voice sliced through the kitchen like a blade dipped in honey. Payton froze, the color draining from her face as the recording poured into the air. Every cruel word, every lie, every plan spoken as easily as a grocery list. David emerged from the living room mid-sentence, a half-eaten sandwich still in his hand. His jaw went slack when he recognized the voice. The message played on, steady and merciless. Her laughter, the nursing home, the forged documents, the joke about Marcus. When it ended, silence spread across the room like smoke. "That's not," Payton began, her voice catching. "Don't," I said. My tone was calm, almost gentle. "Don't lie anymore." Detective Martinez stepped forward, her badge glinting under the kitchen light. Robert opened his folder and laid the printed evidence on the counter. Bank statements, the forged power of attorney, the copy of the nursing home deposit. "We have evidence of multiple offenses," Martinez said evenly. "Fraud, forgery, theft, conspiracy." Payton's lips trembled. "Dorothy, please, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. "I raised you. I know every lie before you speak it." David shifted beside her, his shoulders hunched. "We didn't mean for it to go that far," he muttered. "Didn't mean to steal? Didn't mean to lock me away?" He swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the floor. "We were drowning in debt. The credit cards, the car loan. It felt like the only way out." "So you decided to make me disappear," I said. Payton stepped toward me, tears already streaking down her cheeks. "Dorothy, please, we were scared. I didn't know how to stop everything. I thought if we could just get a clean start." I took one step back, gripping my cane so tightly my knuckles blanched. "You mean my start, my house, my life?" Robert's voice cut through the air, measured but firm. "Payton Morrison, David Morrison, you're under investigation for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. Please remain where you are." The second detective moved in, handcuffs ready. Payton shook her head, sobbing. "No, please. Dorothy, you can't do this. I'm your sister." "You were," I said, "until you decided I was worth more gone than alive." David didn't resist. He just stared at the tile floor like it had the answer he'd been searching for. The metal cuffs clicked closed, sharp and final. As the detectives read them their rights, Payton kept whispering my name, her voice splintering. When they led her toward the door, she looked back. "I'm sorry," she said. The words landed like pebbles thrown at a locked window, soft, pointless. Robert's hand touched my shoulder. "You did the right thing." I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I believed him yet. The trial took months. I barely left my apartment. Every time my phone rang, I expected another betrayal. Robert handled most of the legal work. He kept me updated. The plea deals, the statements, the mounting evidence. The prosecutor called me twice to review testimony. Each time, my stomach twisted into the same knot it had the night I found the recording. Then, 3 days before the trial, Robert called. "They want to make a deal," he said. "What kind of deal?" "They'll plead guilty to all charges: fraud, forgery, conspiracy. In exchange, the prosecutor will recommend suspended sentences, 6 months probation each, restitution included." I let the words hang in the air. "So no jail?" "No jail, but they'll have criminal records, and they'll have to pay back every cent they stole, plus $20,000 in damages." I closed my eyes. "Do it." "You're sure?" "Yes," I said. "I don't need them behind bars. I just need them out of my life." When the plea was accepted, I didn't go to court. Robert handled it. I spent that day cleaning the house. No, clearing it. Every trace of them went into boxes. Payton's lavender shampoo, David's black work boots, the photo of the 3 of us on the hospital steps that first day home. I packed it all and left it for donation. By evening, the place was empty of their ghosts. I sat in the living room, sunlight falling across the carpet in fractured lines. The quiet felt new again. It was the kind of silence that didn't weigh, it breathed. A month later, the house sold faster than I expected. The market was good, and I didn't want to linger in a place where every shadow remembered a lie. I moved into a small apartment near the lake, part of a complex built for people with disabilities. It was modern, bright, and filled with people who understood the rhythm of slow recovery. There was a pool for hydrotherapy, a gym with modified equipment, and a clinic on site. I built a new routine: morning stretches, walks without the cane whenever I could manage, afternoons volunteering at the community center. I found purpose in helping others relearn the simple bravery of standing. At night, I painted. I wasn't any good at first, but painting made the noise in my head quieter. I painted skies, lakes, empty roads, anything that looked like freedom. Robert called once more, months later, to say the restitution had been paid in full. "It's over," he said. But endings are never as clean as paperwork. Sometimes, while I worked on a painting, I'd catch myself remembering the way Payton laughed before she ruined everything. Sometimes I'd hear Marcus's voice reminding me, "You always give too much, Dorothy." He was right, but this time I'd given myself something back. The morning after I finalized the sale, I went to the notary's office and rewrote my will. Every cent, every painting, every object I owned would go to a foundation for people with disabilities, not to family, not to anyone who might turn love into currency. The notary looked up from the papers. "No next of kin?" "None," I said, "at least not anymore." 6 months later, my life was unrecognizable in the best way. I could walk short distances without the cane. I painted with music on. I even laughed again. Neighbors became friends. One of them, an old woman named Rosa, always brought me tea and said, "You remind me of someone who came back from war." Maybe I had. I still missed Marcus, but the ache had changed shape. It was no longer a wound. It was a companion. And as for Payton, I didn't think about her much, or so I told myself, until the day she appeared. It was late afternoon. I was at a cafe near the lake, reading. The place was half empty, soft music playing through old speakers. I looked up, and there she was at the entrance. Payton. Thinner, hair shorter, shoulders smaller. For a heartbeat, I thought it was a ghost. Then she walked toward me. "Dorothy," she said, "can I sit?" I didn't answer, but I didn't stop her either. She sat. Her hands shook as she folded them. "I saw you through the window. I wasn't following you, I swear. She stopped. "I needed to tell you I'm sorry." I said nothing. She continued, her voice breaking. "I lost everything. The house, our friends, our jobs. David left. I work at a gas station now. Every day I think about what I did. You didn't deserve it." Her tears fell onto the table. "Do you remember what you said in that message?" I asked quietly. "About Marcus?" She closed her eyes. "I didn't mean it." "Yes, you did," I said. "You hated that I chose him. You thought I stole something from you. Maybe you were right, but you stole something too. You stole every good memory we had." She sobbed harder. "I don't expect you to forgive me." I finished my coffee, placed the cup down, and looked at her. "I do forgive you," I said. Her eyes widened, wet and hopeful. "But I won't forget, and I don't want to see you again." "Dorothy, please." I stood. "You made your choices. Now live with them." She reached for my hand, but I stepped away. I left her sitting there, crying into her palms, the sound of her sobs following me out into the street. For the first time in years, I felt light. Not happy exactly, but free. 6 months later, I was at my studio desk, finishing a painting of the sunrise over the lake. The doorbell rang. A courier handed me an envelope from the county registrar's office. My stomach tightened. Inside was a form. Annual Guardianship Audit Notice. For a split second, panic surged through me. Then I saw the note scribbled at the bottom. "Sent in error. Please disregard." I laughed, long and breathless. Then I tore the letter in half and dropped it into the bin. When I turned back to my easel, the first rays of sunlight struck the wet paint. It gleamed gold, like a promise I'd finally kept to myself. The morning after I tore up that letter, I woke before sunrise. The apartment was quiet, wrapped in the soft blue of early light. I brewed coffee and stood by the window, watching the lake turn from steel to silver to gold. Somewhere, a gull cried. And for the first time in a long while, the sound didn't feel like loneliness. My life now is smaller, but it fits. The people around me aren't bound by blood. They're connected by choice. At the community center, I teach a beginner's balance class twice a week. We call ourselves the Reclaimers. Some come with crutches, some with scars no one can see, all of us learning how to trust our own feet again. When new members arrive, they often ask what brought me there. I tell them the truth, stripped of the pain but not the lesson. I lost almost everything, I say. And then I found out that everything I really needed was inside me the whole time. They nod, but they never know the whole story. How close I came to being erased, not by strangers, but by the person I once loved most in the world. One afternoon, Rosa stopped by with a canvas she'd found at a thrift shop. "Thought you'd like to paint over it," she said. I smiled. "Maybe I'll keep what's underneath instead." She laughed. "You always have to find meaning in things." "Maybe," I said, brushing my fingers over the old paint. "But maybe that's how you survive." That night, I worked late in the studio. The painting on my easel was a lake at dawn, same as the one outside, but warmer, calmer, a version of peace I hadn't seen until now. I didn't notice the time until my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I heard you're doing well. That makes me happy. P." For a long moment, I stared at the message. The old ache tried to rise, the instinct to respond, to reach across the distance that used to be called family. But I didn't. I deleted the message, powered off my phone, and returned to the painting. The light on the canvas looked alive, as if the sun itself had forgiven me for staying too long in the dark. Weeks passed. The days folded into a rhythm. Coffee, class, painting, lake. The cane gathered dust in the corner. Sometimes, when I walked by the water, I thought about Marcus, not with grief, but with gratitude. He once told me, "You can't rebuild what's gone, but you can build something new in its place." He was right. One Saturday, I brought a few of my paintings to a local art fair. It wasn't much, just a handful of booths, the smell of popcorn in the air, children running between tents, but it felt like a milestone. I sold 2 pieces before noon. A woman asked if the lake scenes were real. "Yes," I said, "every one of them." When I returned home, I hung the last painting I'd kept for myself, the sunrise over the water, the one I'd finished the day the audit letter arrived. Underneath it, I placed a small plaque I'd ordered online. It read, "Still standing." A few months later, while cleaning, I found an old photo album Marcus and I had made years ago. Between the pages was a picture of Payton and me, her high school graduation. She was 17, I was 24, both of us smiling with the kind of innocence that believes love alone can save you. I almost threw it away, but something in her smile stopped me. I placed the photo back inside and closed the album. Some memories aren't meant to be erased. They're meant to remind you how far you've walked. Every now and then, I pass by the old neighborhood. The house is different now. New owners, new paint, a child's tricycle on the porch. I never stop, but I always glance once at the window that used to be my studio. It doesn't hurt anymore. It just feels distant, like a story that belonged to someone else. The world keeps moving, and I move with it. One evening, Rosa and I sat by the lake, the water calm as glass. "Do you ever miss them?" she asked softly. I thought about it. I miss who I thought they were. She nodded. That's the hardest kind of missing. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the hum of crickets. Then I said, I used to believe forgiveness was about letting them off the hook, but it's really about setting myself free. Rosa smiled. "And are you free now?" I looked at the lake, the light, the reflection, the small waves breaking and reforming, endlessly beginning again. "Yes," I said, "I think I am." That night, before going to bed, I stood by the window again. The stars were faint, the moon low, and in the distance, city lights shimmered like something still possible. I thought about everything that had happened, the accident, the betrayal, the years I'd lost to grief and guilt, and realized none of it defined me anymore. I'd learned that survival isn't just living through something, it's deciding what comes next. Tomorrow, I'd teach another class. I'd laugh with Rosa, I'd paint. Maybe I'd even sleep past sunrise. But tonight, I whispered one last thing into the quiet. "Marcus, I'm okay." And for the first time, I believed it.